Hello everyone, welcome to the Turkish Foreign Policy course. Today we will continue with Chapter 5, Turkish Foreign Policy and the Politics of Europeanization 1990-2007. We will start this chapter by talking about Turkish-EU relations in the post-Cold War context. Then we will continue with From the Luxembourg Summit to the Helsinki Summit and post-Helsinki relations. We will lastly talk about accession negotiations and the additional protocol crisis. Let's start with Turkish-EU relations in the post-Cold War context. Since the 19th century, modernization for Turkey has been synonymous with westernization, which can be conceptualized as economic and political convergence to Western legal institutional structures. The process of westernization accelerated in the post-World War II era when Turkey began to take part in post-war institutions, including NATO, the OECD, and the World Bank. In line with this vision, various Turkish governments declared that Turkey's European Economic Community, or EEC, membership would provide required incentives and leverage for the modernization of the country. By expressing its interest and willingness to become a member of the EEC, Turkey made an official application to the organization in 1959. The Commission's opinion on Turkey's bid for full membership caused a new wave of distrust in Turkey concerning its relations with the EC. The opinion alienated the Turkish public opinion, for the EC had not reciprocated Turkey's determination and endeavor to become a member of the organization. During the 1990s, the member countries of the EC had a common position toward Turkey. They would not make any commitment for the future and would not accelerate the integration process with Turkey. In this sense, until the 1999 Helsinki European Council, the European Community continued its relations with Turkey in the framework of establishing a customs union. These diverging positions poisoned the already strained relations between Turkey and the community during the 1990s and the early 2000s. Under these circumstances, upon the recommendation of the Council, the Commission published a cooperation program with Turkey aiming at the finalization of a customs union with Turkey. Now let's talk about From the Luxembourg Summit to the Helsinki Summit, explaining the ups and downs in Turkish-EU relations. Contrary to Turkey's expectations, domestic political conditions in Turkey, as well as the Cyprus conflict, dominated the discussions on Turkey in the 1990s. The EU's attitude toward Turkey became clear in the European Commission's report, known as the Agenda 2000, issued in July 1997. The Agenda 2000 was fully adopted in the December 1997 Luxembourg European Council. The Council reaffirmed the pre-accession strategy framed in the Agenda 2000 and decided to launch the accession process with Hungary, Poland, Estonia, the Czech Republic, Slovenia, and the so-called Republic of Cyprus. The ever-increasing integration between the so-called Republic of Cyprus and the EU in the late 1990s became a source of tension between Turkish foreign policy makers and their European counterparts. Although in the early 1990s, the EU adopted an even-handed approach toward the Cyprus issue in order to preserve the balance between Turkey and Cyprus, with Greece's strategy to link Turkey's EU accession process to the resolution of the Cyprus conflict, the EU's involvement in the conflict damaged its credibility as a non-belligerent actor and an objective broker. Now we can move on to the post-Helsinki relations, a new page in Turkish-EU relations. The 1999 Helsinki European Council decisions on Turkey's candidacy breathed new life into Turkey's EU aspirations. In order to manage the process of EU harmonization, the Turkey-EU Association Council meeting held in April 2000 published an accession partnership document. The document aimed to set the principles, conditions, short-run objectives, and timetables to organize and monitor Turkey's EU harmonization process. In line with the accession partnership document, the Turkish government published a national program which reaffirmed that the Turkish government would work on adopting the EU acquis. Having a concrete membership perspective, Ankara prompted a remarkable reform process in many issue areas. External incentives supported by the EU conditionality mechanism turned out to be effective, and the Turkish government adopted EU harmonization packages regarding highly sensitive political issues, including the abolition of death penalty in times of peace, non-Muslim minorities' religious property rights, broadcasting in languages other than Turkish, and normalization of civil-military relations. Turkish policymakers in the early 2000s acknowledged that the ongoing foreign policy issues, especially the Cyprus conflict, would pose a challenge to Turkey's accession process. In 2001, such developments as the probability of the Cyprus's EU access, Greece's threat to vote the Eastern enlargement without the Cyprus's integration, and strong international leverage on Turkey to reformulate its Cyprus policy pushed Ankara to reconsider its Cyprus strategy. Gradually, it also became obvious that Cyprus would be an EU member state in the next round of EU enlargement. Before we end, we have one last topic to cover, which is accession negotiations and the additional protocol crisis. In December 2002, the European Copenhagen Council declared that the so-called Republic of Cyprus had concluded accession negotiations with the EU together with other 9 candidate countries, and it would become an EU member state on May 1, 2004. This meant that the solution of the Cyprus conflict was not a precondition any longer for Cyprus to become a full EU member. Regarding Turkey's progress toward the EU membership, the Council welcomed the determination of the Turkish government to take further steps to meet the Copenhagen criteria. Despite its positive assessment, the Council raised 2 conditions that were essential to start the negotiation process. First, Turkey was to adopt 6 additional pieces of legislation. Second, the Council reiterated the essentiality of the signing and implementation of the additional protocol of the Ankara Treaty, extending Turkey's customs union to all EU member states before setting a date to open the accession negotiations. As it was agreed at the Brussels Summit, Turkey signed the additional protocol on July 29, 2005 and extended the Ankara Treaty to all EU member states, including Cyprus. Turkey's success in taking steps toward promoting fundamental rights and freedoms, reforming its judicial and economic systems, as well as finding a peaceful solution on Cyprus, did not convince those European leaders who opposed Turkey's EU membership. For the anti-Turkish European circles, Turkey's population rate, economic and political level of development, level of Europeanness, religious and cultural orientation, as well as its geographical distance to Europe, were main sources of anxiety. So this is the end of our program for Chapter 5 of the Turkish Foreign Policy course. Goodbye and see you in our next program, Chapter 6.